So hey guys, welcome to the latest Top Tier Tiers podcast episode. It's me, Alfred Yang. Joined with me, as always, is Tom.
Greetings. Hello.
And how have you been? How's the week been for you?
I fixed my sleep schedule, but I feel like I've ruined it, which is like totally fine. Uh
I was about to say the time we record is like not the greatest time for you, right?
no. But I had fixed my sleep schedule maybe a little too well. Like I was falling asleep at like 8 p.m. earlier this week and waking up at like 5 a.m.
That's
Um which was nice. I actually really liked it a lot. I felt like
you do feel productive in the mornings, right?
I felt like I had more energy. Yeah, it was nice. But goodbye to
Probably
that, I
not
guess.
compatible. Yeah, I mean it's not
Goodbye
like
to
the
that.
most compatible thing with life either. Like only you can only do
No.
so much at 5 a.m.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, that's good. Anything new on the Wise side of things? Are you
No, well, my locals just had uh their so there's a new store in the area and they've been doing this thing with other games where they've hosted tournaments with like kind of insane prize pools. They did 1K tournaments for Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh.
that is
Um
kind of insane.
just to to get people in the door, and they had like really good turnout for all those events, and then we had our Weiss event, not a more modest pool of $500 this past weekend.
More modest
um
pool of $500, one of the highest prize pools in any Wise tournament outside of Japan.
yeah, so yeah, we just had that. I had fun. I got top 8 but lost in top 8. uh
What'd you play?
I played Grisaya.
Oh yeah. So it's mixed language or
It is mixed language. They asked Japanese players to have like a source for
translations?
translations, yeah, on hand
Hmm.
in case someone
It's
asks. I didn't have to actually, you know, load up part of the cards actually, which was cool.
hmm. Well, that's a good thought for our main topic later in the discussion.
Yeah.
But I mean, it sounds good. New stores is always an exciting event, and it's great that they're supporting Weiss. That's definitely not a
Mm-hmm.
given these days.
I
Hmm.
was actually consulted a
Uh,
little bit before things got started with the store. We can talk
hmm.
about that. We'll get to it later.
Yeah,
Um
it's a good timing that we decide to do this particular topic. Uh,
I hope
as for
you're doing
me,
well.
nothing.
Yeah.
I'm doing well, but nothing's really happening. My parents caught COVID, but I don't live with them, so that's that, and they're
Ruh-roh.
mostly recovered. But like, it's we're kind of just living with COVID these days. It sucks, but get vaccinated, just use common sense, and it'll be fine. I have miraculously not caught COVID despite working in healthcare pretty much non-stop for the last 2.5 years.
I
So
have not caught COVID
uh,
as well. Knock on wood.
it's knock on wood. It's
Mm.
not pleasant, even if it is kind of a fact of life these days. I am about to move to another job where I will be going to prison every day. I will be working in the
Wow.
healthcare system in prison, so
That's
that'll be interesting.
damn.
Look, the first thing everyone says is how cool it'll be, but from what I know about the forensic system, it just means a lot of paperwork. So we'll see how that goes. And also, you're not allowed to bring your phones inside the prison, so I will be forced to take a lot of time off social media, which is probably a good thing. Probably a good thing.
Yeah.
Um,
Can't play
on the
gacha
wise
games too.
side, yeah, well, I'll just do all my dailies on like the on the commute to prison, and we'll be okay. On the wise side of things, very little has changed. I have been rolling my eyes at the reveals that keep coming out for Pixar. But other than that, not really much to say. I haven't ordered anything because I'm about to move. I don't want there to be like deliveries when I'm not here. That will be awkward, especially when my housemates probably have an idea that I play this game, but they'd like I don't need them to like forward cards or anything. I don't want to put that on them. So yeah, kind of a slow week. Oh, what I did do was I went on some really bad Mercari sprees.
Uh-oh.
Don't go on online and make bad decisions when you are half awake at 3 a.m. That is just a very bad idea. I do not recommend it. I don't think I regret my purchases, but there are definitely timelines where I do regret them. So we'll see how it all pans out. Anyway, I don't think we can not discuss the Buzz and Woody before we move on to our actual topic. Um, like you started during like Nisekoi, right?
Ye
No, maybe not
Prismalia's
quite Nisekoi.
Y. Prismalia's Y was my first Japanese set.
Is that before or after?
It's after. It's like a
After, sure.
half a year afterwards. It was after the emergency bans,
Sure.
for sure.
Were you there when like, because there have been several times in Wise history where finisher creep has occurred in a really obvious way. After like
Sure.
Nisekoi was one of them, but after Nisekoi, I think the next one after that was To Love Ru.
Yep.
Were you playing then?
I
Yeah, because like
was. I was.
when you, because when everyone saw Yami, that was like alarm bells were ringing. Everyone knew this was now a
It's
tier
pretty
one set. That was
crazy.
just it was pretty crazy. And this set didn't even have an early play. It like had nothing except a functional base and a level 3. Um I don't think I've seen as much frustration and uproar about a finisher since Yami basically.
I
This
thought
new
Monogatari
finisher.
was a little worse, to be
Who
honest.
was?
I thought Monogatari was
Which
a
one?
little worse in that regard, actually.
I don't think there was as much outcry before it released though, was there?
No,
Like
but people definitely got. I mean, that's because people didn't. I mean, once the build was figured out, I think people got pretty
yeah,
annoyed,
yeah, sure.
actually.
I mean, that's the same with D side, right? Like the
Oh, we're
card.
talking about during spoiler season. My bad, my bad.
Yeah, yeah. In spoiler season, I don't think there was anything as obviously nonsensical. I guess maybe
Um,
Kokachino was pretty bad as well,
Cocochino is
right?
pretty. I think people were pretty aghast at
Oh,
Cocochino, but that was like a year and a half after Televeru.
people were mad about Mocha as well, but for different reasons, I think. Uh,
Um,
as well as the Albuda version, but that just turned out to not be a functional deck, so whatever.
were people
Uh,
mad about Sunshine? I'm trying
I
to
don't think it
remember.
was quite as obvious. People were upset because of the early play part of it, not necessarily because of the finisher part of it. And then it turned out that neither the finisher nor early play part of it was like the bonkers part. It was actually the level X. So quite the set, you know.
Sure.
Uh,
I think apart from that, I think maybe Girl from Beta got a little bit of buzz,
nah,
but not
nah,
obviously
not
nothing on the level of this. So
so. I don't think anyone has been able to ignore how obnoxiously powerful the Woody and Buzz card is. So for the uninformed, it's a 3/2, it heals, it's 11k for, like, it's just 11k for free, and its effect is, at the end of this card's attack, you may pay 1, ditch 1 card, and there's a bunch of fake requirements. If you do, your opponent reveals 6 cards from their deck, and then they shuffle their deck, and then they take X uncancelable damage, where X is the number of climaxes they revealed. So, and we will talk about this at some point in the future.
I
With the magic,
love
Mhm.
uncancelable damage.
It's the best mechanic. With the magic of damage calculations and simulations, which, like I said, is a topic we might discuss in the future. It's been found that with fairly average compression situations, people are over 60% to just eat 7 from this and die. And it does not get any worse when you are fairly compressed. In fact, it is just really difficult to find a compression situation which is good for this card. And like, we don't need to go super in depth, but basically, a card this obnoxiously powerful, regardless of compression, is really bad for the game. Like, we're already in a situation where level 2 is a danger zone, And there's something to be said about not feeling safe at level 2. Like, sometimes that sense of tension is good, but level 3s are really important to the game. Like, they're usually the most expensive cards in decks, they have the flashiest effects, they have the strongest effects, and they're what you've been building towards for the whole game. So if you just kind of die from 2-5 or 2-6, that's really off-putting. And this is really bad design in that regard. I think this is way too strong, way too pushed, way too cheap. This card should have cost way, way more, and even then, we should have been worried about it. Like, if this was on the level of the Grisaya finisher, the Yuji and what's her name, white-haired girl,
Kazuki.
um, Kazuki, that
Kazuki is
one,
her name.
the choice climax finisher. If this was on the level of that, where it was just extremely expensive and like a reasonable payoff for having like 12 stock or whatever, fine, that's not a problem. This can be done for almost no investment, and that is absolutely ridiculous. This is the comparison to Yami is very apt because Yami was literally the same thing. You go into level 3 with 6 stock, you can triple Yami, and it even digs for its own climax. This is the same. You go into level 3 with 6 stock, if you have the climax, you just get to kill them. And that is terrible. That is really, really terrible. I do not like it. I want it known that I don't like it. Uh I'm sounding like a broken record here. Do you have
Mm,
any thoughts that are not have not been reflected in what I've said?
mm, mm.
It is kind of hilarious though, right? Like, this is Pixar. This is like this is not a set that needed help selling. This was gonna sell no matter what. So the fact that this is the new generation clearly best set on the level of like Data Live and Nisekoi before it, uh that's kind of funny, to be honest. Like, the hits don't stop either. Like, the Pixar has gotten a whole host of really powerful spoilers. They've gotten the memory kit counter, which coincidentally is one of the only ways to fight against Buzz and Woody. It's like, just putting it out there. They got a stock swap. They got other off finishers. They got a really powerful Marika-esque Buzz Lightyear finisher. Just, oh my god, what are these words coming out of my mouth? This is insane. Weiss in 2022 is wild, man. It is wild. But look, there's probably never been a better time to get into Weiss, which brings us to the topic of today's episode, which is expanding your local scene, trying to dig in and get more people playing this game that we all enjoy or, tolerate, depending on how many Buzz and Woodies are in your future. Uh, yeah, let's
This
get
set isn't gonna be. This set's not gonna be legal for play, is it?
no, not for any competitive play, thankfully. It'll
Outside of
probably
Japan,
be
that is.
banned. It'll be banned to hell in Japan because it just has too much not to be good. But
Well,
outside of Japan,
licensing, yeah, it's gonna be
yeah,
an
it's
issue for sure.
not going to be legal for WGP. Not going to be legal for anything meaningful. I'm pretty sure Southeast Asian countries, Australia, all those countries just probably won't be able to license it anyway. So we're safe for the most part. Anyway, let's talk about a issue that's really important for anyone who is like invested or trying to get into the game. Expanding your local scene. So first things first. Weiss is a fun game. We want to be able to play it with more people, and we want to have more people to play. Get into the game and enjoy it, and build a good community around. The more people that are playing, the more different decks you'll get to play against. The more people you get to hang out with. The more connections you'll make, and some of these people may become lifelong friends. It's some of my best friends are people from the Weiss and Pokemon and tabletop gaming communities that I'm not going to meet them through other walks of life, but I've met them and now they're really great friends. And I want to help other people, uh, expand their scenes to get a shot at this sort of great feeling. Now, it was a long time ago. I'm guessing it was at least 5 years ago. I wrote an article on this exact topic on the old blog toptiertiers.org. And I think while a lot of it does kind of still ring true, a lot has changed in the digital age. And I think there are some other things we do want to touch on when it comes to expanding a scene. So you said earlier that you were consulted about the new store that's opened up. What sort of things did they ask you about?
I think the primary concern for the person trying to organize it all was how to get like shops on board, because we had recently um we were recently kind of forced to, stop a locals because a shop just didn't really want to, like, they don't sell Weiss, so us being there was just kind of annoying for them, unfortunately. So the
Mhm.
concern was, how do we get a shop interested in hosting Weiss stuff? And I mean, my answer was just um to be pretty honest about what, goes into supporting a scene, which is that you probably want to have product, and you probably want to intend to sell that product. Um and that if there's no, like, uh so the relationship has to, be good for both parties, right? Both sides, players and the shop, right? uh if the shop decide like it, if the shop thinks that the product won't be profitable, then there's no reason for them to, do anything about it, right?
Of
So
course, they're a business.
yeah, I just said to them to be honest about their proposal to the store. um it's really important that the shop knows what they're getting into, that they're not, just buying product and then getting left in the lurch, with
Hmm.
product they can't move, the product they think they can't move or can't move later on down the line. um it's really important for the
No,
shop to, like, be able to turn a profit with Weiss, I think. I think that's like
absolutely.
I think that's the number one goal, I think, for any kind of like shop that wants to host events.
Yeah.
um
So to sell people on Weiss, well, in my opinion, Weiss has always been a product that basically sells itself.
yeah,
Because like,
I think getting players is like no big deal, for sure.
but in order
um
to sell the stores on this, you have to kind of you need a pitch. And the pitch is like it's been made for you. This is the card game which has Attack on Titan. This is the card game with Sword Art Online. It has Fate's Grand Order. It has HoloLive, for Christ's sake. Like, HoloLive is still kind of an underground thing. VTubers are not like super mainstream, but if you are in the know, you have heard of VTubers. This is a big deal. And like, it's not just that either. There's heaps of I don't know what the correct term is. Cult popular shows like Dun Marchi, Data Live, Quintessential Quintuplets, Persona 5 is in like there's so many sets that are just they're things that card gamers in the the sort of demographic of person who likes video games, likes anime and manga. These are series that people connect with. And if you can sell a store on the idea that these things will probably sell as long as you advertise it right, then that's a really good start to making them convinced about the product. And once they're convinced they can sell things, they can start to run events.
right.
But no,
One of the
you
things
go
that
on.
one of the things we're concerned about, specifically, is just because Neo Standard is the way most people play Weiss. um One of the big concerns, what I think is a pretty valid concern, is that not all Weiss product is universally, like, sellable. So there's
Hmm.
a bit of risk involved in investing in a set, because you don't know how many people, how much of the player base is going to buy into the set, how many of the player base is going to even be interested in the set, like buying like packs or whatever, you know
Yes.
being you like and it goes up to like incentive to play, right? So uh you want players to be satisfied with using their store credit on product, so they have a reason to like come in every week and spend, however much money for the entry fee. You
Yeah.
want players to be satisfied with the product, uh, in addition to the shop being able to sell that product.
It
So that was like a
it's
big concern. Uh,
it is pretty common that like for Magic players, when they play an event, they get Magic product, and because all Magic cards kind of work with each other, there's always something that either they're going to be chasing or that they're able to sell back to the store that they're happy with. Whereas with Weiss, once you've gotten your deck, you usually just have your deck. You don't necessarily want to buy other things. Like if you are a person who mostly plays SAO, and then say you win a tournament and you've got some store credit, and you don't want to spend it on like I don't know, rent a
Love
girlfriend
Life, yeah, or
or
Rent a
love live,
Girlfriend,
yeah,
yeah.
sets that like aren't high demand and you probably won't be able to do much with. And that is a problem. One of the things that some of my locals would do is they would just let you keep the store credit there, and then they let you trade it in towards products later, or let you trade it in towards certain promos. Or
Right.
I guess something else that has been done in places I've played in the past, you can just use your store credit for card supplies, like sleeves or deck boxes, which is another thing that is useful. But you're right, that is probably the single biggest obstacle to convincing stores to stock Wise. It's just not a product that's as easy to move as, say, Pokemon is.
In that regard, I think some of the recent sets have been pretty good products. I think I'm
Hmm.
thinking specifically of Hololive, mainly because, um, apart from people who are weirded out by VTubers, which is totally fine. I think Hololive offers a lot to people who are both interested in the IP as well as people who like playing the game. Um, I don't know if you agree or disagree with that. Uh, I think like if you investing in Hololive means you have access to a bunch of different decks with a bunch of different goals and game plans, and it's like fun to play around with builds and
That much is absolutely true. If you're like
discuss
getting
them.
into the game and you like find a card that you think is really cool, like say you really like the Sora Tokino or whatever her name is in Hololive because you think being able to pull a bunch of copies out is really cool. I think that's what that card does, right? I'm
I
pretty
have
sure
no
that's what that
idea.
card does.
Isn't it a minus
Whatever.
soul card?
I
Oh, it
don't
also plays
remember.
itself. It also plays itself. Yeah, it plays itself from deck, and it's also -2 soul card.
But all of these things, like, they're pretty cool concepts when it comes to a card game. This card, like, clones itself. It is a defensive card in a fairly offensive game. If you open a card like that and you think, wow, that's kind of cool, maybe I want a deck around this, then that's something you can do.
Right. And they
Uh,
committed pretty. They also committed like pretty hard to making specific archetypes of the characters work well with each other.
yeah.
Which I think is a big draw for people who are interested in the IP. Um,
I mean, this is an issue plaguing not really stores, but more Weiss in general. The way because of the way Weiss is structured, it's kind of like a standalone LCG rather than a TCG.
yeah, I think people
And
have said that compared it to like Netrunner or whatever. Um,
uh not quite like Net well, yeah, kind of. Netrunner is a game where you need to buy every set because pretty much every deck gets small upgrades or gets side grades from every new expansion. Netrunner's dead now because Fantasy Flight Games is stuff happened, but I don't think it's quite the same. But it is the same in the way product is bought. You only
right.
usually buy the product once. You're not kind of gonna buy extra product or extra singles or be using your store credit on that sort of stuff after that. So the other thing you can consider, and stores are very loath to do this, is cash flow. So cash prices. I
Ah,
would I do not think that's going to happen unless the community really steps forward itself. You can't expect stores to do that. But you can tell stores that if they're willing to be a play space for these people, you can think about all of the drinks and all of the snack
it's
sales that come in.
it's such a hard sell though because it's like
It
completely
is.
location dependent, right? Like, what if there's a Starbucks or like a really good boba place right next to the store? Ironically, placing your business in a place where people want to gather will hurt the business, like the car shop's ability to generate revenue if they decide to go that route.
That's
So
true.
it's definitely a bit of a challenge. I think our the community that's been built around this new store, uh we're being, I think they're being pretty reserved about what kind of what kind of series they're willing to invest in. Right now it's specifically English. I think it's mostly just English right now, which is understandable because a lot of new players playing English
English.
right now.
Yeah.
But they're trying to make sure that they have people who are definitely interested in certain kinds of product before they pull the trigger. Like they've run polls asking people whether they want like AOT, Quince 2, and making sure that the demand matches what kind of product they're going to buy.
That's just good business. Like one of the
Yeah.
things that a lot of stores do is they get a couple cases of product at baseline, or just some sets they only get one case because they don't think it'll be popular, and then they ask people about their about
Uh-huh.
pre-orders or about what sort of demand there would be for this set, and then when you go from there, they will get more or less product, kind of like how you used to do that in for niche games early on in card games lives like because Weiss is more or less print to demand. So you do have to be very careful about what you do buy, and that it is at least going to break you even, if not make you profit over time, or else you're going to run into a situation like, well, the
Batman
disaster
Ninja.
situation. Batman Ninja is the disaster for specifically Strictly Broken, but I think many stores were burned by Seven Deadly Sins. I think that
Mm-hmm.
was while it was a very competent set, it just turns out that Seven Deadly Sins is unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on your opinion on the series, just not a particularly popular series. It's just a B shonen that people read after they get sick of the existing B shonen, like, Black Clover and stuff. And nothing against all you people who love Seven Deadly Sins. There's definitely good parts about it. It's just that it's just not as mainstream credible as shows like Sword Art Online or Attack on Titan, which it is dangerous. But the lineup coming up for Weiss is it's stellar. Like you've
I think
got
for English,
Avatar.
it's really good. Yeah, English seems really good for the foreseeable future. Yeah.
You've got Kaguya-sama, which is a currently airing incredibly popular series. Like you've got, I mean, I don't actually think Dead Live is very popular, but is consistently one of the best-selling series in English for whatever reason.
I don't know how
And
well like Dragon Maid will do because I know that's coming English for sure.
people like Dragon Maid, but I think they like the anime. I don't know how much they're going to go in for this series on a wide scale. Like the reception for this show is really good, but it's always the vocal minority that makes their voice heard. So, I'm not
Right.
convinced. I
So,
reckon there are no, you go on.
oh, I was about to move on, but um,
Yeah, I mean,
if you wanted to
so
finish that thought.
that's just about how you try to convince a local store to buy into Weiss. Because if you do that, then the game builds itself around the store. Like if there's a play space, if they're advertising for you, if they're willing to get the word out there, then don't have to do nearly as much work. But I think another
Mm-hmm.
part of what this discussion should entail is what happens when you don't have a store nearby, or if like the nearest store is 3 hours
Mm.
away, which is definitely the case for a lot of people, and is definitely a reason that people have been turned off Weiss. So I thought we would recap a bit of kind of riffing off what I wrote all those years ago, but also kind of updating it to the here and now because we do have more resources now. The first thing you need to decide when you try to figure out about a local scene is whether or not you can actually get a local scene together. So, unfortunately, some places in the world just do not have people there who are going to want to play the game physically. And that is just an unfortunate truth sometimes. Sometimes it's too regional, too remote, or just the culture is too different. Like
Or COVID.
uh, COVID, of course. Some places are just swamped with COVID, or people are really concerned about it, or places are still in lockdown. And if that is the case, then, well, it's probably not a good idea to do a physical thing. But if you are in like a mostly urban area, then let's be real. There are going to be people in your urban area who like anime, who like collecting things, who like merchandise. And the goal of a Weiss scene is to find people to play Weiss with. So we need to kind of figure out what the target audience of this card game is. And it's pretty clear to anyone who has seen a Weiss card. Weiss is merchandise, and it is also a card game. So the first people you should aim at are the people who would be interested in the merchandise. Anime fans, so to speak.
It all goes back to
And
buying product, essentially.
exactly,
Like
you
you
need
want,
people who are willing to buy the product.
yeah.
So that's a certain type of person, but like they're around, they exist. People continue to buy the new Pokemon games. People like collecting, people like pretty cards. That is just the truth. So if you think you are in an area with a sizable enough population that you can probably find a few people to spend, $50 to $100 buying a couple of decks to play together, then that is where you start. Then you need to think about how much you're willing to put in. Like, you as a person, are you a high school student? If you're a high school student, you probably may not have as much money, and therefore, if you're working a job, then sure.
Uh,
But that's still not a lot of cash flow. You might have a curfew for all we know. You
man,
might be limited.
being into
Hmm?
card games as like a high school or college student without a job is so
It
painful.
sucks.
It's
But
really
in
bad.
for English wise these days, I think it's better than it's ever been, which is another thing, and another reason we're doing this cast, right?
Yeah, that's true.
You can definitely play Weiss on a budget, and that should be. We'll talk about that in just a bit.
It should be
But you
something
have
that gets brought up pretty quickly, I think.
yes, you need to decide how far you're willing to go with this game. Are you going to be someone who is happy with just playing it as a hobby on the side at like a D&D night, or are you someone who wants to grow a scene to become the very best like there never was, and end up going to Rochester to play in the United States Nationals, eke it out and go to, well, I'm actually gonna guess that they're holding Worlds in not Japan this season, so go to probably Singapore or something for Worlds. Who knows? You have to figure out where you're going with the game and how seriously you want to take it. And it's only when you have that decision that you should decide where to go from there. A lot of people will stop at this point because they just want to collect or they just want to play it super casually. And that is totally fine. That doesn't mean you can't be part of a bigger community where you can all get together, have a great laugh, have some beers if you're not a high school student. Just have a weekly pizza night where you play Weiss, shoot the shit, and watch The Room for the fifth time. That's totally fine, totally great. And it leads back to what I said at the very beginning of this topic, where it's just a really fun community to be in. But if you want to really expand a community because you find the game super fun, you want to spread it to as many people as you want, then let's talk about it. Let's talk about what you should do. The first thing you should do is highlight the strengths of Weiss. The first strength of Weiss in this day and age is that compared to a lot of games, such as Yu-Gi-Oh!, such as Pokemon, I reckon, I actually don't know how much, anyway, and such as most Eternal Magic formats, Weiss is very cheap to get into in
Pokemon's pretty
comparison.
cheap too, actually.
Uh,
Yeah,
Pokemon,
yeah, Pokemon's pretty cheap.
yeah. Um, but to get a tier 1 deck, I don't think there are many games that are as good as where there is an investment as good as Weiss.
Oh yeah, I
If
think
you
I think
buy it,
Weiss definitely a bit cheaper.
you know,
Yeah.
if you buy a really decent Hololive deck like a Korone Marine or a Kanata Marine deck or whatever, that deck will probably serve you for the next year and a half minimum. and you can probably spend little bits here and there to upgrade it, because there is a new booster coming, and it will remain tier 1, very competitive, and you'll have a really nice looking deck with all of your favorite VTubers, or maybe some of your favorite VTubers, who knows. And that is a legitimate draw to both competitive players and people who are kind of teetering as to whether they want to get in or not. If you can tempt people in by saying, well, if you spend $100 here, you can get a competitive Fate Grand Order Lancer Artoria deck, that is often enough for some people. And if you can get someone really interested and they're willing to go the distance as well, then congratulations. You found a playtest partner. You found as long as you can deal with their personality, you found a really good friend. And, that's a really good place to start. There are common places where you should try to advertise and look for these sorts of people. And those places, most of them require you to have a friend who is willing to play with you to some degree. Because if you just kind of sit at a desk solitaring a deck, that's kind of weird, There's probably not going to be too many people coming up to talk to you about that. But if you just have one person with you playing a game, and the people notice that one person has a Fate deck and the other person has a Konosuba deck, that's often enough to get people to walk up and talk to you about it. Has that ever happened to you?
Yeah, it has.
Any specific
Uh,
places you might recommend?
um, Let me think. I feel like
Like,
malls are okay. Malls close to a movie theater, like malls with a movie theater, are okay.
mm-hmm,
Um, Food places not that great. Maybe like a boba place if they have tables to play on.
mm-hmm,
Not a bad bet. Um, any like an actual card shop would also be fine. Like obviously, an actual
yes,
card shop would be ideal. Um, any play like or any like place that is somehow adjacent to trading card games, so such as this is an outlier example, but Frankensons in Los
hmm,
Angeles. It's a trade. It's like a trade like show,
Expo, right?
trade
Mm,
show. Yeah, it's a biweekly trade show. Um, but if you're playing Weiss, someone will probably come up and in a place like that and be curious if they see something they recognize.
hmm,
And that's really the thing. I think uh, people get kind of excited when they see something they recognize. I think most
mm-hmm,
of the time it's been like Sour Fate that gets people to ask about stuff. I'm sure with like Ruby and stuff, eventually Avatar, and maybe someone out there is playing Pixar and it gets recognized. You know, um, I'm I'm sure that'll start to happen a lot more. But yeah,
hmm.
I think any place where there's like gonna be higher than normal like weeb or nerd concentration is a good bet for sure.
Yeah, like, and we're using that term with as much affection as we can because it is just straight up the truth. Playing at, say, a university anime club
Oh
or in a
yeah.
university rumpus room, or like at a popular boba
Ah.
place right next to the pop culture shop that stocks all of the like the Nendos and shit like that, is a really really good place to get interest coming in. And we're recommending this as if it's really easy. It's not. Like, some people have social anxiety. Some people are really bad at selling things because they get caught up in stage fright, or they don't like talking to
The
strangers.
success
But
rate is also very low. Like
exactly,
people
because
rarely, yeah, it just rarely like goes from recognition of something they like know to I'm gonna buy
mhm,
into this card game. I feel like it's a pretty
it
low
is
success
rare.
rate, but
But
something is better than nothing, of course.
the thing you have to trust in is that there are people around who care about this sort of stuff, and that's kind of going back to what I said earlier. You just have to trust that your local area has people willing to do this and who are on
Mhm.
the lookout for this and who are willing to buy in. That's why places where you can consistently go and be like every week after week, like a card gaming store, like an anime club, are the best places because it'll give people an idea that, oh, there is actually community I can join. Maybe I can, play games with these people on a weekly basis because I'm here anyway. It's what I'm doing anyway. Maybe there's something else I want to do. Kind of an like a tangent. How did you get into Wise? Like, was this how you got in?
Anime Club.
Yeah, there you go.
Anime Club. I
Anime
knew
Club.
someone. I knew someone from Anime Club that played the game,
And
and I
for
got
me, I
baited by
yeah,
Monogatari, English
baited.
Monogatari.
You know what's really funny? The way I got baited was also not an anime club, but like in like a campus rumpus room where people just kind of chill and use the Wi-Fi and stuff. I walked past and two guys were playing, and one guy had a Monogatari deck,
Oh
which was
shoot!
also what baited me into it. So one thing led to another, and now I'm where I am, obviously. But I would argue that I'm the sort of person that would have eventually found Weiss and been pretty interested in it anyway. Because I had actively decided not to play Magic because I knew how much of a time sink it would be. But I really loved card games, so I am definitely the exact sort of person who would have found it anyway. And that's kind of what I'm. The basic point here is if you think the people who will be interested in Weiss exist, so the people who like merchandising, who like strategy games, who like pretty cards, who this is a good one, who like gacha games, because this is just a big gacha game where you can quote unquote spark by playing singles, right? By buying singles.
Nice one.
It really is, right? These sort of people, if you know that they exist out there, they'll probably find the game eventually, and you just have to do your best to make it visible.
Yeah.
So,
Oh,
yeah.
I think I
So,
also got baited by Nisekoi actually, but um,
okay.
as at the
You,
time I was like into it, but it was still a Japanese property. Like it's still just a Japanese only set, so I was
hmm
just kind of turned off by that, understandably, because I was like, eh.
Yeah. So, I mean, you
Uh,
had to wait until you had your beloved little girls with Prisma Ilia to get started. I see.
no, no. I mean, I'm just telling you. Wait, no, no. When I said it, this is why was the first set. It was like the set that came out when I like actually
I'm
started
joking,
playing.
man. I'm joking. I know. I know.
That was actually around the time English Nisekoi came out, and that's like the first
Hmm.
set I actually bought into, for real.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah. So just to outline, play in a be visible, play sets that well, you have to like the set. Like don't go out and buy English Fairy Tale for the sake of maybe
oh
attracting an eye or two.
jeez.
Play look, I'm gonna say this now. As someone who used to demo at conventions, the only reason I have English Fairy Tale is because I fell into this trap and thought Fairy Tale would be a good deck to draw people in.
Oh yeah, Max
It,
decks draw eyes too. Actually, I'm not saying that you should
I
buy
was
a
about to
Max
say,
deck,
do
but
not
like
advocate to the cheapest max deck on the market right now.
like Hololive
Probably,
SP, like Hololive SSPs really pop, right? Like you
yeah,
can
they
see
look
those things
nice.
from a mile away. They're so shiny with like the rainbow shit, the rainbow borders and stuff.
But
Um,
like even the cheapest max rarity deck, which is probably Danmachi right now, it's got like a bunch of Hestias, nothing else, is still upwards of $2,000,
yeah,
$3,000.
I would not. If you have a buddy though that has a Max deck.
No, no. Or if you have a max rarity deck that you don't mind playing, then by all means. And we understand that some people do not like to play with max rarity because that is, diminishing value or something like that. But cards are meant to be played. That's the opinion of the Top Tier Tiers podcast. I don't care if that's not your opinion, Tom. It is now. But if you are willing to play with max rarity decks, that is another great way to draw eyes.
Yep.
Okay, so now you have a scrappy band of 4 or 5 people who get together every second Sunday at Rob's place to order mediocre pizza and play Weiss Schwartz. Where do you go from there? Yeah.
I'm I mean, you don't necessarily need to feel like you have to go anywhere from there to start, I guess. But
That's that's the perfect answer. You don't need to go anywhere from there. If you're happy with that, then that's enough. That is how I would estimate a large percentage of, not like a majority, but like a large percentage of Wise players around the world are probably in that situation. They play occasionally as like a side game at a games night, or they get together to drink and watch Netflix and play Weiss and just have a good time. That is probably a percentage of Weiss players. But if
yeah,
you want to really push more competitively or push towards a bigger community or really spread out, maybe the best weapon at your disposal is social media.
right.
So
Some amount of organization is really nice, especially if you're trying to
yes.
get new people in. It's way more convenient to just have a group where stuff is
Hmm.
announced.
Just don't be afraid to shout out in the big groups. As both me and Tom moderate the Weischwartz global community, and we see all of the people who join, and we have like questions that ask, how did you hear about this group? Do you play or collect? And lots of people are in really high population areas and say, I want to play, but I don't know where to get started. Look, if you're in an area where you think there might be people hiding that you don't know about, just shout out on one of the Facebook or Discord groups and see if you can connect with people that way. If you can advertise like where the groups play, or like offer another little local Facebook group or Discord group that or WhatsApp chat or something that you can be a part of, that's another way to incorporate other people. And you can't really push this too hard because like you can't force people into being super competitive or coming every single week or competing to that degree because that doesn't make for a good time. You just kind of have to be in the group, wait until people with a similar level of competitive mindset to you join, and then if those are your aspirations, that's when you can strike. That's when you can start going to higher places. But until then, just like what Tom said, there shouldn't be any pressure to go above and above the weekly or 2 weekly meetup, which is it's great fun in its own right. It's just a good time.
Yeah,
But the other thing I was kind of getting at is what Tom was talking about earlier when it comes to convincing stores to possibly carry the game. The first step I think is just to go to the store and play the game. So depending on the size of the store, sometimes the store owner themselves is the one who mans it, or like the person who manages the franchise or whatever. And if you can get them to lay eyes on your game and they're like not completely sick of life after, judging a Yu-Gi-Oh pre-release or whatever, then striking up a conversation and talking about how this game is certainly something that could sell, that's a really good way to get started. That's how I've seen multiple locals get started for multiple card games, including card games that are less marketable than Weiss is. Right.
yeah. I mean, developing a relationship with a shop, it is way easier when you have a
If you're a
friendly
local.
relationship. Yeah, if you're local, if you're a friend with a shop owner, um, everything's way easier. Like
Sometimes it's
it's hard to describe how like I don't know, like when you're friends with someone, it's easier to ask them for
decent, yeah.
stuff.
Like
Um,
sometimes it is literally about being in the game for long enough. Like, of all, like I've been in card games for the better part of. Oh my god, I think it might actually be closer to 20 years than 10 now, and that's a little bit concerning. But if you have been in the game long enough, or been in the card game sphere long enough, you just kind of know the people who own the card game stores. Like, of the 4 or 5 card game stores in the big city near me, I personally know the owners of 3 of them. I'm very good friends with one of them, and the others I am acquainted with enough that I could probably wave hello if I saw them in a shopping mall or something. if you're just in the game long enough and you don't have to take the game seriously or anything, you just have to kind of be around, then you can make a cordial relationship. And here's the other thing that you can do if you are one of those people who's just kind of old in the tooth and you don't want to be on the ground recruiting or playing every single week. If you see a fledgling group starting up, then there are ways to support them. You can provide them with like cheap loaner decks that you don't play anymore. You can provide them with bulk to hand out and use at meetups and events. Hell, if you've got connections or play space, you can offer that connection or play space. And depending on how much you care or want to be in the game, you can also just be an organizer, be a big part of the community, which is really rewarding sometimes, even when you don't get to play as much. Like I don't get to play nearly as much because I don't live near my current playgroup anymore. But when I do get to play, it's still really fun, and I have dropped into new stores as they start Weiss locals, and it's great. It's great to see new people picking up the game, and nearly losing to their Persona 5 trial deck as they two soul you into oblivion. It's quite the feeling, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's really about trusting that the people who want to play Weiss are out there, that they just
Oh,
don't know you yet, you know?
one thing that's really important, developing that relationship is super important because it also makes it easier to kind of get flexible and get creative with how store credit is doled out. Like for example, the new store that I mentioned earlier, they're doing this. They're doing a system where you get credit based on how many games you win every week,
Mm-hmm.
and there's an additional bonus payout if you stay for the entire like all of the rounds,
Mm.
which I think is cool. And uh, because they have such a good relationship with the store owner, they've even gotten like uh permission to do like a separate side tournament with its own like buy-in for just for new players or intended for new players. Um
Mm.
so new players don't have to feel like, they're just donating money every week. They can play, against other new players, less experienced players, and then feel less pressured to play fast or whatever, right? I think
Mm.
that's like a pretty that's like a pretty significant thing that I kind of felt bad about when I was starting to play. Like I was super slow, and I felt really bad sitting there, trying to figure out what to do, and while my opponent was just
Mm.
twiddling their thumbs.
And
Uh,
yeah, that's just like another general thing. If you want to grow a scene, just be a nice person. Help out the beginners. Don't get angry at them for taking ages. Weiss is a game which is incredibly complex to learn because of all the words and the different definitions, and everything's going everywhere. It's even harder if you come from a game like Vanguard, where there are just enough similarities to make it kind of familiar, but just enough differences for it to be super confusing. Like, I have seen so many new Weiss players trigger check and then take it straight to hand because of Vanguard, and it's like, you can't get angry at that. You have to just be nice to the new players. And
yeah.
initiatives like what Tom is describing are great. Like incentives like learn to play events are really great. Incentives where new players get a trial deck and like 3 boosters, and they build a deck from that. I've seen a couple of those. If your store can afford that, that's a really good way both to draw an interest and also offload product. I have seen some stores that stock a small supply of singles, put up some low value SPs as additional incentives, because like
Mm,
SPs are, you know, a lot of SPs won't sell. Just that's just straight up going to be the truth. They probably will not sell, but if they don't cost more than like $20 or $30, if that's an incentive for entry, you will probably get more people entering than if you didn't have that incentive. Because SPs, like Tom said earlier, are really shiny. They are really nice, and they are pretty hard to open. So if you have junk SPs lying around, and I know there aren't really many junk SPs nowadays, they just get graded and they're priced quintuples or whatever. But if you have one lying around that you just don't think is particularly valuable to you, then donating it to a store for an event prize is totally something you could do. Like, if you've got an in with the store owner, then thinking outside the box is just a really valid way of going about things.
Yeah. Mm,
Yeah. So the other thing that I think is important is if you are someone who is like taking a leadership role in the group, and that's not an easy thing to do. I'll just say that now. It is a really
yeah,
hard thing to be a
it
leader.
is. Yeah.
It's a lot of pressure at times, especially if if you have to mediate or if there are people who are just do not have the group's best interest around or the community's best interest around. But staying on top of like stuff that's coming up and being someone who can support new players and old players is a really big deal. Like some of the things you can do, you can tell people about what the upcoming product will be because not everyone's going to be clued into that. You can be someone who organizes group orders from stores like online stores like Army Army or groups like having a Tenso account, for example, to do group orders from UUT. That's a really good thing for a group to have access to if Japanese is something they want to dip their toes into. I kind of lost my train of thought, but basically, providing those sort of services is just quality of life improvements that make everyone's experience better and really improves the chance that your group will be around to stay. And I mean, that's what we said earlier. The game is fun. We want people to keep playing it.
Yeah.
So maybe the last thing we'll touch on is kind of once your group is established, further creating relationships with neighboring regions and organizing greater scale things like group traveling as a group to events is totally something you should try doing. Weiss is getting more and more popular in 2022. Like sales are increasing and there's a whole bunch of collectors entering this space, and some of these collectors are going to be players, and because the exposure is increasing there are heaps of players as well, no doubt in part due to the fairly cheap top tier decks that you can build. When you get enough players willing to be competitive, you can start organizing trips. You can go to neighboring states and compete in the tournaments. If it's a trios tournament, then well, guess what? You need people to play trios, so it'd be a good idea to get a bunch of people together for that. If you just go together as a group, you can save on hotel booking fees. There might be someone who just has family in the area, so you can just crash at their place. You can you can go and eat food as a group, which is often cheaper. You get to eat different things, and that's great. And you get to go to the tournament, and you will never have to be the only person in the room, like who has no one around them, who's just kind of alone. And that because that feeling is not fun. If you're someone who does not enjoy being alone, it's doubly bad. But if you have a group of people around you, or like have organized to meet up with people you've talked to online, then that's a really big boon as well. It's another big draw to having a big community to as part of your local game store, I suppose.
Yeah. Also,
Yep,
being in unfamiliar places with a group of people is just way safer, you know, like
absolutely.
way less chance of your stuff getting stolen, getting mugged, and all that stuff. It's unpleasant to think about, but it's stuff that
It is.
you should think
It's
about when
true.
you're if you're going to travel.
Like
Um
if you book a budget motel in like the in a district of Chicago you've never been to, then you're gonna be safer if you've got two other people sharing your room than if you were just by yourself. That's
yeah.
just true. So yeah, there are lots of benefits to having friends with the same level of interest, and you should definitely consider it if you are looking to get competitive. Okay, is there anything else you reckon we need to touch on? Because
Mm,
it's a really it's a nuanced topic, right? There's just a lot to personalize for
Yeah.
everybody.
Um.
Probably not, right? It's a pretty extensive topic already, and I'm sure there are people who have had different experiences, people who have employed really creative other methods that we haven't even thought of. But if you guys do have methods like that, then leave a comment, message us, let us know. If there's other things that you reckon are a really good idea, maybe we'll talk about it briefly in the intro of another cast just to catch everyone up on it, because it turns out that community involvement just really improves everything, and that includes content creation. Um, I think that if you don't have a community and you think that there might be one out there, then it can never hurt to just throw out a post on the Weichschwartz global page or on the Weichschwartz TCG Discord and ask, are there any people playing in South Dakota? And chances are someone will know about something in South Dakota. Maybe they went there, maybe they've got a friend who plays there, and they'll be able to hook you up, and maybe that'll be, a group of friends for life.
Yeah.
But
Always nice.
regardless of where you play, yeah, regardless of where you play, regardless of who you play with, like it's a fun game. We just want to share it with our friends. I am probably going to take my annual leave this year. I'm going to go visit my family overseas. I'm going to fly for the first time in several years, and then I'm going to spend probably most of my vacation with friends I've met in the Weiss Schwartz community, and that's going to be great. It
Playing
is
card games.
it is going to be great. We are probably not going to play as many card games. We're going to eat so much food. And that's just one of the beautiful parts of being in the community. You meet all sorts of people you never would have otherwise. So, let us know what your experiences are, what your thoughts were in regards to how you got started, or if your struggles in trying to grow the community. Everyone's definitely got struggles in that, and happy to hear any feedback at all. Do the normal social media stuff, I guess. If you're listening on YouTube or Spotify, thank you. And look, I hope it was at least enjoyable, if not informative. Anything else you want to say before we pack it up, Tom?
No, no. I think we covered everything.
No, it's a good cast. It's a really important topic to touch on, I think. So thank you all for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Bye bye.